Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, where we talk about wealth creation, property investment, and success. But today I've got a special guest who's mastered the art of non-verbal communication. Look, we're living in the world where words often fail us, where what's unspoken sometimes matters more than what's said. In the intricate dance of business and negotiation, whether it's property or other areas, understanding body language can be an exceptional advantage. It can help you read situations accurately, handle conflicts effectively, and build genuine relationships. So my guest today is Allan Pease, a globally recognised expert in body language who spent decades studying, analysing and teaching the delicate art of non-verbal communication. Allan's not just an expert, he's sought after consultant, a best-selling author, an engaging speaker who's transformed the lives of thousands by unlocking the secrets hidden in our gestures and our expressions and our subtle movements. So our chat today will be valuable for you, not just with regard to property or negotiations, but in business, in your job and in your personal life. Because we're going to delve deep into the world of non-verbal cues, what they mean, and how you can use them to your advantage. So sit back. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're not going to sit. Maybe you're going to walk. Maybe you're exercising. Maybe you're at the gym. Maybe you're riding. I listen to podcasts, walking Lincoln, our dog. But whatever it is, stay tuned, tune in, and let's get ready to explore the fascinating realm of body language with Allan Pease.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Today I'd like to have a chat about body language so you can understand what people who you're dealing with are really thinking rather than the words that are coming out of their mouth. And this is clearly useful not only in your career, in business, in real estate negotiations, but in your personal life. So I'm looking forward to my chat with Allan Pease, who is internationally known as Mr. Body Language. Allan regularly appears in the media around the world, and he's sought after to give advice on personal image to business people, prime ministers, TV presenters, and I believe also royalty and rock stars. And together with his wife and co-author Barbara Pease, Allan's one of the world's most successful non-fiction authors, writing 18 bestseller books. I know his books have been translated to 55 languages and sold over 30 million copies. So welcome, Allan.
Hey, Michael, I can't wait to hear what I've got to say after that introduction.
After that introduction. Well, Allan, I remember first learning about body language from you on television. Now, it was probably, 30 years ago, maybe even 40 years ago, on the midday show. I was a young boy then, learning that words count for less than 10% of how communication is interpreted, and the rest's non-verbal, Allan.
Well, that's right. And when you're in a face-to-face situation, which on a podcast we're down to two mediums, words and intonation and voice. When you're face-to-face, the impact of the message you're making on the person with body language is 60 to 80% of that message. So 2/3 to 3/4, you could say, how you come across to someone is the way you look, appear, behave, gesture, and so on. And the rest of it is tone of voice or words. And words make somewhere between 7 to 10% of the impact of what you're saying. So in other words, what you say face-to-face doesn't matter all that much. And that's why people who look charismatic, who are good on TV, are good presenters, they can get up and say stuff that's ridiculous and outrageous, even lies, and it looks convincing because they look good, they look confident, they look like they know what they're talking about when they don't necessarily do.
Now, I was going to say, is that how politicians get away with it? But I don't even think we should go down that route, Allan. So tell us a bit about how you got started in body language, because in my recollection, you're the first one who made this much more public, much better known.
Well, that's true. I was the first to popularise it worldwide, and we went into every language and in about 150 different countries. It was quite amazing. And the interesting thing about it, Michael, is that whichever country or whichever language it was printed in, the people who read it locally thought it had been written by somebody local who knew them and knew their culture, which was interesting because it demonstrates what I said in that original book on body language, that the basics are the same everywhere. The basic means of communication is the same because body language, in simple terms, is an outward reflection of your emotional condition. So whatever emotion you're feeling, happy, sad, angry, defeated, proud, concerned. Whatever emotion is likely to be reflected in gestures, movements, expressions. So the art of reading body language is simply reading a person's emotional condition. Then you match it up to what you hear them saying in the circumstance under which it's all happening. That allows you, when you become good at this, to figure out what could be going on through their mind. So for me, it started as a kid. I had jobs as a kid selling, which back in those days when I was young, you could sell as a kid, knocking on doors, selling rubber sponges or selling things for the Boy Scouts. And I was really good at it. And I developed techniques of being able to get people to let me into their house to give a little demonstration. And part of that became a sales course. And in the sales course that I wrote when I was a teenager was how to look at somebody when you're presenting an idea or a concept, and by their behaviour, work out what could be going on through their mind, which allows you to know what they might do next. So simple things like if somebody says, "How much does this cost then, Alan?" Well, if you were to say, well, the investment in this product, Michael, is $100. Now, if they move back slightly or crossed their arms or held hands with themselves or tilted their head to one side, inevitably you'd get some sort of rejection. You get a no, or you get less talk. They stop talking, or they give an objection, or they just wouldn't participate. You get no cooperation. So I picked up all these things that I thought everybody knew about. Turns out everybody didn't know.
No.
It turns out most women did know, but they didn't know that they knew it. They knew it on a subconscious level, what they would probably call their intuitive feelings about someone. So I picked this up and I documented in a training manual in the late 1960s called How to Read the Language of Your Customer's Body. And that was the precursor, 25 pages, that became the book Body Language back in the mid-70s, which is now the definitive book of body language.
Yes.
So for me, it started with really practical terms of being face-to-face with customers and potential buyers and sussing out what they might do next. Are they with me? Are they against me? Do they believe me? Do they want to argue the point? Should I now go for the close because they're showing that they're ready for it? And that became enormously popular with audiences, particularly salespeople, because salespeople back in the 60s and early 70s, you've got to remember too, Michael, are all men. So for them, this is
Yes.
a revelation. They'd never heard of any such thing and they were fascinated. But what I found was when they brought their wives, girlfriends, and women to the seminars, the women would all say, well, yeah, that's right. What he's saying, that's how it works. But they didn't know that they knew that that's how it worked.
I remember your book, Why Men Lie and Women Don't Read Roadmaps. In fact, I've got it on my bookshelf. I've got a number of your books there. And you clearly pointed out, and you taught me many, many years ago, that different genders communicate differently. So are men or women better at reading nonverbal languages? I think you've already told us.
Well, that's an interesting point. You say that, when I wrote that, the original book was called Why Men Don't Listen, Women Can't Read Maps, followed by Why Men Lie, Women Cry. And when the Why Men Don't Listen, Women Can't Read Maps book came out, it was enormously popular in every country. Again, people thought it had been written by a local author because it identified with them whether they were Africans or Alaskans or whether they were Finnish or Icelandic or Americans or Indians. They all thought it was written by a local person, which backed up what we already knew, that male and female brains behave in similar ways despite culture. But of course, now that's become a politically incorrect thing. We're supposed to go around pretending to each other that men and women now think the same way, respond the same way, and want the same things. And if you've had any experience with the opposite sex, you'll know that's just not true. They don't.
Exactly right.
We don't think the same way. We think differently, not better or worse, differently. And that's because the people who think these things are confusing. They're confusing difference with equality.
That's a good point. You're right.
Yeah, well, equality means regardless of where you come from, who you are, what sex, race, culture you are, you can choose to do anything you want, same as anybody. But difference is a science question. How does your brain receive information and change it? And so now we've got a situation where we're trying to pretend, certainly in governments and councils, you see this so often, we're trying to pretend that we all behave the same way. When we all secretly know we don't, we behave differently because we want difference, Michael. Do you want to wake up in the morning and listen to you?
I can't think of anything more boring.
You want to wake up and listen to and look at somebody who is different, that stimulates you, that has a different perspective on things, that has different ideas and sees things in a different way. Otherwise, you'd be bored out of your head. And that's what it is. So back to the question then of do men and women, and it's even hard to say men and women now because
You've
gender
got to
is.
be very careful, yes. Okay, so we are all different, and that's good. And it's actually good that we're recognising we're all different and equal in certain ways, but different. That's fine. Now, last time we spoke was right at the beginning of COVID, and I was holed up in Melbourne and you're up north in the sunny Queensland. But since then, the world has changed. We're working a lot more remotely. We've got so many more Zoom meetings. How has that affected how business people and anyone actually can understand body language, the techniques in today's era of online meetings?
Well, yeah, it definitely has. It's a very different world, as you said, than before COVID. And what COVID did, it brought our whole technology forward 10 years. So we were forced, in effect, to have to go online and do Zoom and become capable and competent at, which has changed the way people work. It means they can work in remote locations and still be at work. So how does it differ? Well, when you're on a remote call, when you're on a Zoom type call or a video call, normally you only see the person from the chest to the top of their head. So you're not getting the full body information you get if you were face to face. But there are some advantages and disadvantages of being online. First is online, you can do things that you cannot do face to face. For example, you can stare. You can stare at a person, look at their face, look at their hair, look at every mark. Where face to face in real time, you wouldn't do that. We in places like Australia, we meet someone's gaze 2/3 of the time, then we look away 1/3, back 2/3, look away 1/3. Yet online, you can look 100% of the time, stare them right in the eye, which means that when you go online to do an interview or to do a presentation or to meet someone, you've got to make sure that your face and your presentation is right. I wear makeup when I go onto a significant online broadcast. My wife will powder me up and just cover up any spots and dimples and things, make sure my hair's right, because if there's any woman on that program, she's going to spot it. Oh, he didn't brush his hair to the left, or he's got that pimple on the right. So you've got to make sure that when you go on any video or Zoom call, you're on television, you're on TV, and you've got to make sure you look like that, because one of the mistakes many people have made with video calls for many people has become a kind of almost a social relaxed thing, because that's how it started out. And so people get online dressed like they're going to a party, or it's a man, he hasn't sort of shaved, he's got a bit of stubble, or a woman hasn't presented herself as she would if she went face to face. And these things are very important because people are staring at you. That's the first thing to be aware of. Secondly, is your background. What's behind you? And most people don't think about what's behind them. Now, most programs today have a function where you can drop a green screen in behind it. Pretty simple to learn. And you can put any background in you like. You can put in a business background. So you appear to be in the office when, in fact, you're laying on the beach at Noosa.
Yes, or vice versa.
Really, unless someone's an expert, they don't really know. And so that way you don't have anybody who's looking at the background. I remember one Zoom call I was on, I'll never forget this. This guy's dressed in a suit and tie. He was in England, and it was all very proper, and we were negotiating a pretty significant deal. And he was at home, and behind him was the door, and that door opened, and a 4-year-old walked out with their pants around their knees. It was a toilet. And this kid ran back inside and came out again with toilet paper stuck in their bum. And this guy didn't know it. And he's talking officially. And I am cracking up with laughter. And he didn't realise why until he looked behind me. Oh, he said, I apologise. So you've got to make sure you know what the background is. Now, there are things you can do online to create a rapport. And it's the same as face-to-face. If you create a rapport with someone, if they like you, if they buy you, they feel comfortable, there's a pretty good chance they might go buy what goes with you, which is what you've got to say or sell. So things you can do online. And we're on a podcast now, so nobody can see me, but I'll describe what I'm doing, because you and I are
I can see you, yep.
Yeah, you can see me. So when you make a point, when you talk, you lean forward slightly. So you see how my face now is getting bigger?
Yes.
So now when I lean forward, I talk. When I'm finished, I lean back. Now, once I've done that 2 or 3 times, you as the viewer realise unconsciously, when I lean back, it's your turn. So you've got to come up with something. So if I'm leaning forward, then you come up with some statement, and it's a silly statement. I just have to lean back, and you feel like you have to justify what you just said because you know it's your turn. So leaning forward and back can control the length of sentences. And with your hands, make sure your palms are visible. Now, we know in body language, and you and I talked about this before, Michael, that people see the palms of your hands, they're more likely to be cooperative because it's a primate signal, shows you're not holding any weapons in your hand, nothing concealed that you're going to hit them with. And monkeys and chimps behave the same way with open palms. That's why people who speak with their palms visible get more cooperation than those who have their palms down, or those who finger point get the least cooperation. But the thing about having hands online, you've got to make sure they don't come forward, because if they come forward towards the screen, they look bigger than your head.
Yes.
So you've got to make sure your hands are back. It's an unnatural position for you to take, to have your hands back while you're talking.
Yes.
But if you do that, so your hands don't look bigger than your head, you can create that feeling of rapport where people don't feel threatened and intimidated. And as you talk on a screen, you do the same as you do face-to-face. Nod your head. Most people don't nod their head on a screen because it's kind of like they're looking at a movie. And when you're watching a movie, you don't nod your head. But you've actually got a live person. And if you were face-to-face with that person, you'd probably be nodding your head in groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, stop. 1, 2, 3, stop. What we've found that when you do 1, 2, 3, stop, people will continue to talk and give more information, which is important. But if you keep your head still, they don't know when to stop or start. So this way you're controlling who's saying what when they're saying. And it's far more important online as it is same as when you're face-to-face. If you want to be convincing and persuasive, you've got to have 2 ears, 1 mouth, and use them in that proportion. And most people don't. Many people that I know, and you do too probably, are 1 giant mouth and no ears. And nobody buys from them. Nobody's convinced or persuaded or influenced. So you use your ears, 2 ears, 1 mouth. There's a simple way to remember. Keep them talking, because what they say is important, because they're telling you what you should do or say next.
Now, this is really important for people in business, for salespeople, for negotiations. But for those listening to this who are not in business and saying, I'm not selling something, yes, you are. You're negotiating continuously with your wife who takes out the rubbish at night, what TV show you're watching. You're negotiating continuously with your kids. You've got to do these chores before you do the homework. So this is just as relevant in personal intercommunication as well, isn't it, Allan?
Well, 60 to 80% of all the impact you're making is the way you look, appear, and behave. If you come across as aggressive or pushy or defensive, people are going to respond to that and not want to cooperate and go along with what you want. So you're right. It's no different whether you're face-to-face at home with your family or whether you're face-to-face with customers in the field or with co-workers. That you've got to be the sort of person who can sell yourself, and if people buy you, that they will buy what goes with you. And that applies equally at home as it does face-to-face. But a lot of people forget that. You see this a lot in management and sales and marketing. They learn these skills at work and they use them at work and they get results, get good results. Then they go home and they forget about it and have everybody aggro about them.
Now, some people would say, hey, but Allan, no, I want to be natural. I don't want to fake it. What would you say to them?
Well, I do get that question a lot. I want to be normal. Well, I say, what's natural? Natural means you want to repeat the body language signals and gestures you've had most of your life. Now, just because you've got those things most of your life and you're comfortable with them, you don't have to think about it. That doesn't mean they're serving you well. That doesn't mean it's choosing everybody off. So you need to know what signals are there in your repertoire that might be turning people off, because everybody's got a few of these things. You probably don't know what yours. Nobody knows what they are. And you need to find out. And the way to find out is very simple. Do a little training course with a couple of your mates who are interested in this subject of body language, and film yourself with a camera, just interacting with people or interacting with customers, or even a role play is good. And then play it back a week later with the sound off when everybody's forgotten about it. And then ask others, what do you think your attitude is being projected to these other people? And you can be somehow shocked and horrified about, oh, you're really aggressive there, Allan, or you really cheesed him off there. Well, he was trying to speak and you cut him off and you didn't even know. So your own training course with a video phone is very, very important, critical. And most people won't do it because, look, we hate to see ourselves on video and we don't like to listen to ourselves on recording. But if you don't know how you're coming across, you will continually cheese people off. And it's a bit like I had a guy recently, he went to work. He went to some customers. He wore a big red nose. It was a pig nose. And I said, well, why would you do that? He said, well, I've always had a pig nose since I was a kid, and I like it. Well, it doesn't matter what you like. What does the customer, the person you want to persuade, think when they see this?
Yeah.
And the key to presentation, and this extends to dressing yourself with clothing. People say, what should I wear? Well, what does the person you want to persuade or influence think you would look like? How would they expect you to be dressed if clearly you know what you're talking about? You're an expert in your field. and you match whatever that stereotypical thing is, because that's what they expect you to look like. So if a lawyer turned up to defend you in court, Michael, and he had on a pair of thongs and board shorts and a 5-day beard and a man bun, what would you think?
Yes, exactly. So I know you've done a course with Barbara on this, and we'll leave a link in the show notes, Mastering Body Language, Truth, Lies, Love and Power, because that's something people can use online as 4 hours of training. So I'll leave a link to that. But some people are going to, I'd like to talk a bit more about that down the track if we could as well. But I'd like to ask you, based on what we've talked about, how the world's different today, everyone seems to be on WhatsApp or Instagram or communicating that way. It seems if they're doing that, they're really missing out on many of the modalities of communication, Allan.
Well, that's true. When you've got voice only and words only, which is what you've got in text, for example, you've got words only. If you're going to get into trouble with someone or really upset someone, it's going to be in a text, Michael, isn't it? And look, we've all sent a text to someone. Look, and I've done it too, where I've dropped in a little humorous line, and just to be a bit humorous. I think I know that well. I thought I knew this particular person well enough to put in a funny line, and they got really upset with me. They said, "What sort of rude comment is that to be saying to me?" Whereas if I said it face to face, where they're reading my body language,
yes,
and they can see that it was humorous, well, then it would have a humorous effect. But that's why when you're using text only, it's important to get practiced in using emojis, because emojis are frozen images of body language. They show what your attitude was when you made the comment. And you don't have to convince women to use emojis. They're experts. They love putting in hearts and kisses and faces. And that's good because it puts intonation and it puts body language into your conversation. If you just put text only, you're leaving the reader to their own devices to interpret what they think you probably meant, which is not necessarily what you said.
Well, that's fascinating because only a couple of weeks ago, I did exactly that. I got myself into trouble because somebody made a comment. I congratulated her on Instagram on her new book because I know how much work's involved. I've written 9 books. I've had them published internationally. You've done much, much, much more than me. And I know, you know how much work was involved. So I said congratulations. And she thought I was making fun of her because she'd only written 1 book and because she said, how many have you written? So the text was taken totally out of context.
It's a bit like, oh well, congratulations.
Yeah, exactly.
You say to a woman, how are you feeling, darling? And she says, fine. What does that mean, Michael?
Yes, you know, especially with your
all
wife.
Sorts of things, but not necessarily positive. And most men have had experience know that fine doesn't mean fine. It can mean a whole range of things from 1 to 10 and what punishment you're about to suffer.
So therefore, more emojis in social media.
Like a lot of guys, a lot of male-brained people, men, they get a bit funny about emojis. Oh, that's all girl stuff. And, I'm an executive. But if you want to be communicative in text only, it pays you big dividends to be effective at dropping in emojis because people know what your attitude was when you made whatever the statement was you made.
Now, you've been a very successful business person, public speaker, but I know you've got successful business. And I remember last time we spoke, you've also got a substantial property portfolio. At the moment, we're having challenges. Last time we spoke a number of years ago, there was challenges of a world pandemic just starting out. We had no idea where we were and we were all scared and worried. And look where we are now. We've got through it and life's better than ever. But there's different challenges now. High interest rates, inflation, talk about recession, concerns of the cost of living. What advice would you have for some of the younger people wanting to get ahead financially, wanting to succeed?
Look, the thing about finances and making money and keeping money, which are 2 different things.
Yes, they are.
Making a lot of money is not really a difficult thing. Hanging on to it long term, that's a different animal altogether, keeping hold of it. So the advice is first that there's always going to be recession, high interest, low interest, deflation, inflation. We're going to be hit by the COVID type situations again and again. And if you look through the history of the human race, it's been like that for hundreds of years, maybe even longer. So there's always going to be these things, but if you've never seen them before, if it's the first time for you, you can start to feel a bit panicky about this because you don't know what's going to happen. At my age, I'm in my 70s, so I've seen 5 recessions. I've seen 5 different flu types, from bird flu to avian flu to COVID. I've been through 3 terrorist attacks. These things all happen in your life, so you've got to expect them. So when they happen, that you're not thrown out by it and go into panic mode and pull your head in like a turtle.
I often say you've got to expect the world to break once every decade or so.
It will. It will. And our health, the COVID thing is, it's not the first time that's happened in history. If you go back 500 years, you had the Black Plague, which wiped out 2/3 of Europe. And, the Spanish flu back in the early 1900s, that killed millions of people. And COVID and the influenza, which we've got influenza A and B at the moment running around Australia, and that's killed a lot of people in the last couple of months. So these things are always going to be there. You've just got to prepare yourself to protect yourself against these things, but expect that financially and health-wise, things will happen. That's the first thing. Secondly, that you want to be financially successful. The number one rule, and most people don't really understand this, is you must decide that's what you will do. For example, let's pick a simple, I will become a millionaire by age 30. Which was one of my goals, by the way, when I was 19.
So was mine, but $1 million was worth a lot in those days. It's not worth that much today.
Well, I was 19. You're talking about in the late 60s, $1 million was a lot of money. The average income was like $45 a week or something like that.
I didn't make it by 30, but I made it by 40, Alan. And then I went through my divorce and my asset reallocation program. And then I've got it back multifold.
I like that asset reallocation. That's really good. Well, I had it at 30, and when I set that, I started in a small country town in Victoria in Australia, in housing commission. So we started with nothing. I grew up as a kid. We had nothing, but it doesn't matter when you grow up like as a kid. You don't know you haven't got something until you become an adult. I realised as an adult, we had nothing. So when I went broke back in the 90s, which I did, we lost everything. It wasn't that big a shock because I went back to zero. Well, actually, I went beyond zero. We're millions in the red as well. But I knew what it was like not to have anything, so it wasn't a big shock at all. And so the first thing you've got to do if you want to become financially successful is you make a decision, that's what you will do. And then you quantify it. How do you quantify what that is? Well, will I be a millionaire by this certain age? Will I have X amount of assets? Will I have so much real estate share? Whatever it is that you quantify. And most people don't do that. They wait for something to break, and that's like buying a lottery ticket. I mean, I don't buy lottery tickets, Michael, because you spend $100 on a lottery ticket and you'll get nothing mostly. Whereas I have $100 to invest, I can turn that into $200 by next week.
Yeah. Well, so you're saying that people have got to set clear goals. I don't think many people do set clear goals or goals at all. But if they do, the goals are vague. In other words, I'm going to go to Sydney but rather than I want to go to a particular location in Sydney at a particular time, particular address. So you often talk about setting those clear goals and the power of your reticular activating system acting as both a GPS and also a search engine to find those goals. I mean, that happens in the background. That's very powerful. I'd love you to have a bit of a chat about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wrote an entire book about that, a bestseller, which we called The Answer, which was very successful everywhere on exactly that system. And the reticular activating system, which only less than 10% of people know what that is or have ever heard of it, yet it's one of the most dramatic and important things they'll ever hear in their entire lives. And what it is, it's a golf ball size, a lot of neuro endings and nerves that sit above the spinal cord at the back of your head. And very simple, as what it is, it's the system that goes out and searches the environment and brings back information based on what you've asked it, just like a Google does. So with Google, you put in whatever words or phrases you want. It searches the entire universe for that information and gives you in priority order what it was. And this is what the reticular activating system does. We call it the RAS for short, the RAS. And so what it means is all you have to really do is not work out how you're going to do something. And this is what most people do. They start with, I don't know how I could become wealthy. I don't know how I could have I don't know how I could accumulate money. I don't know how I could. Well, you don't have to know how. What you've got to do is know what. What is it exactly that you want? So I want to become a real estate developer. I want to become a financial mogul. I want to become a Buddhist monk, or I want to become whatever it is important to you. And it varies from all of us what's important. Decide that's what I will do. Now, people will say to you, yeah, but Michael, how will you do that? Well, it doesn't matter how. Once you have decided what you're going to do, the reticular activating system searches the environment just like Google, and the answers appear. And this is the incredible thing about success, that you don't have to work out how. But most of us, we're raised in Western societies we're trained to think, how would I do this? Look, it doesn't matter how. Think about what you want. It's a bit like whatever car you drive, anybody listening to this podcast, whatever car you're currently driving, the moment you decided to get that car and start driving, you saw that car everywhere.
Yes,
Everybody's driving your car.
But others are thinking differently. Alan, I often mention the story of when I taught Harrison, my younger son, to drive. We were going down the Pean Highway, Elstonwick, you'll remember from the old Melbourne days. That's where all the car yards were. And he said, "Hey, Dad, have a look at all the Corollas." And I said, "Hey, Harrison, where are the Corollas? Look at all the Mercedes." I saw different things to him.
Yeah. His rad was programmed for Toyotas. Yours was programmed for Mercedes. And that's exactly how it works. So if you decide you're going to buy you would like to have a Mercedes four-wheel drive, electric or whatever it might be, the moment you decide to do that, you will see them everywhere. You'll see them in movies on TV. You'll see it at the airport advertised for rental. Everybody seems to be driving that car. And that's the secret. Once you've told the RAS what you want, it will search for the how. You don't have to start with the how. If you start with the how, you'll never move forward at all.
Sure. So it acts as a search engine. It also acts as a GPS because you don't actually have to know, as you say, how you're going to get there. And if you go off path, and you usually will, it'll bring you back on path, but you've got to know exactly where you want to end up.
Well, that's right. I mean, most people have enormous faith in their GPS on their phone or their car. They'll put an address of 20 Smith Street, Noosa, and we have complete faith that we're going to go to that front door near enough to it. Even though we're probably not technical experts, we're not computer experts, most of us, and we don't know how it even works. We just have faith that we put in the address and we'll get there. And that's exactly how the RAS in your brain works. Just put in the address you want, the clear address. So the address was 20 Smith Street, Noosa. It'll take you, within a couple of meters of that address. But if you don't put a clear address like 20 Smith Street, Noosa, if you just put in Smith Street, Noosa, it'll take you to Smith Street. Now, it's a long street. You still don't know where you are. If you just put in Noosa, it'll take you to the town hall, the centre.
So the RAS, just to make it clear for the people who don't understand, is the thing that actually allows women to sleep. And as soon as the baby cries, they're going to wake up, but the husband next door won't. It likes hearing your voice, but it likes picking things that you believe. It will unfortunately lead you down the path of some of your preconceptions, won't it, Alan?
Well, that's right. I mean, we all have preconceived ideas that we were raised with in societies as kids, raised by our parents or brothers, sisters, societies, religions, schools, and so on, that they taught us that this is the way things are. And most of those things you learn are not the way things are if you want to be successful. It's exactly that. You've got to decide where you want to go and go for that, and then identify what are the things that are stopping you moving forward. Because there are things that will stop you moving forward. And there are plenty of online courses you can get that'll teach you how to do this. It'll teach you, like, once you leave school, most people think they've finished school or university, but they haven't. They've only just started. It's only the beginning. And teaching yourself online every year is a critical part of development, because after 10 years, you can be one of two types of people. That is a person who's got 1 year's experience, they repeat it 10 times, or a person with 10 years experience, and they're two totally different people.
Well, you've given of your time really freely, and I just want to share one of your courses, because when I asked you what would you like me to promote, you said nothing, because I thought it was a good time to catch up again. But if people listening to this got some benefit from it and see, gee, there's a lot more I want to learn, I'm going to leave a link in the show note to Allan and Barbara Pease's Mastering Body Language course. It's online, so you can do it at your convenience. There's an intake starting really soon. So if you're wanting a deeper understanding of human behaviour, and this isn't manipulation, the big difference in my mind, Allan, is your intent. If the intent is positive, to help your customers, your clients, to help your family members, rather than manipulation, deceiving, then understanding this is critical for your success, isn't it?
Well, 60 to 80% of how you're coming across and how people receive you is the way you look, appear, and behave and dress. And what you actually say, the things we can put in a text, doesn't have much impact face-to-face. Text it does, but face-to-face, it doesn't. And if you don't know how you're coming across, you don't know what things you're doing to turn people off. And a video training course of your own, just with the video, will allow you to see what that is. That's the first thing. And secondly, you need to be able to look at other people and evaluate, what are they feeling about what you're saying? Are they with you? Are they against you? Are they buying? Are they not buying? Are they holding back? And if you can't do that, if you can't communicate, then you're going to rely on the law of average to try and be convincing. And that's a pretty hard way to go.
Well, I've just looked at the curriculum of your course, 15 lessons, so I'll leave a link in the show notes. Allan, thank you once again for giving generously of your time. And I think what we're trying to do is awaken people to realise that there are other things going on in the background, and that, as you said, the words that we say, and we spend so much time trying to get those right, are nowhere near as important as so many other factors, Allan.
Well, that's right. I mean, words themselves account for 7 to 10% of the impact face-to-face. There's not that much. It also means if you've got the right presentation, body language rise, you can say outrageous things to people's faces, incredible things, and they'll accept it and let you get away with it. And modern politicians know this.
That's the truth. Thank you so much for your time, Allan.
My pleasure, Michael.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Allan Pease. In a moment, I'll share my mindset message with you. It's actually come from a blog from Tom Corley about that success is actually a habit. Now, that's an interesting thought. I'll go into that in a bit of detail in a moment. But before I do, if you got some benefit from my chat with Allan Pease, if you think it's going to help you, but you don't currently subscribe to this podcast, why don't you just stop for a second, go to whichever podcast app you're on, and follow or subscribe, so twice a week you keep getting my show and all the information from our great guests. And by the way, if you got some benefit from it, you know somebody else who'd get benefit, why not use the share button on the podcast app and tell them about it as well? I'd really appreciate that. I bet they would as well. Now, as I said, in a moment, I'm going to share my mindset message with you. But if I've got a moment, I'd like to just talk about property, because I guess you've seen the news. All the research houses have reported month after month that our property market has moved forward. Yes, it's not growing as fast as it did earlier on, but that's fine. We've had quite a number of months of overall house prices rising, but our markets are very fragmented. So are you still interested? Are you interested in getting involved in property investment this year or a new home? Well, if so, why not have an obligation-free chat with my team at Metropole? We're much more than just another buyer's agent. We help our clients safely create intergenerational wealth through property. And while we're big enough to tip the scales in your favour, we're small enough to care. So I'll leave a link in the show notes, but go to metropole.com.au and organise an obligation-free chat with my team. Discover your options and see which of our services may be of benefit for you. And if they're not, we're going to honestly tell you that too. metropole.com.au.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
My message to you today in this mindset message was inspired by a blog by Tom Corley, where he said success is not event-driven, it's habit-driven. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you'd know I've written an international bestseller with Tom Corley, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, that's been translated into many, many languages. And we talk a lot about habits. In fact, John Jacob Astor said wealth is largely the result of habit. You see, it's the little things in life that you do that lay the foundations for your long-term success. Now, the media loves promoting stories about needles in the haystack, individuals who become overnight successes. You know, those people who buy 10 properties in 10 minutes or 7 properties in 7 years, from flipping burgers to being a property mogul. But for 99% of successful people out there, success isn't event-driven. It's not due to luck. It's habit-driven. Success for the vast majority of us is about doing little things every day to help build momentum in your life. And this momentum keeps moving you forward, growing your knowledge base, growing your skills, growing your success. When you forge daily habits that are all directed towards some lifelong dream, some long-term goal, then your success is inevitable. The successful things that you should do every day make that long-term success possible. So what are some of these things you can do? Well, Tom Corley wrote a list of them, and he said, say no often. Make a habit of saying no to things which don't align with your dreams and your goals. We've mentioned that before in previous chats, haven't we? He also says, say yes infrequently. Make a habit of saying yes only to things that are directly tied to your dreams and your goals. Tom Corley suggests you should learn every day. Make a habit of learning something new every day. Growth comes from acquiring new knowledge and developing new skills. The world's changing in front of our eyes. You can't keep doing the things you've done before. You've got to learn, you've got to improve, you've got to grow every day. So make a habit of maintaining your knowledge and perfecting your skills every day. Also, you are going to need a level of financial discipline. So Tom suggested in the blog that inspired my chat with you today to make a habit of saving money, because money gives you options. It empowers you. Opportunities can only be taken advantage of when you've got the financial resources to take advantage of those opportunities. So I guess that means learn the art of delayed gratification. Tom also suggests you should focus on fundamentals. Make a habit of mastering the basics. Learn the fundamentals before you dive into anything. Ignoring the basics is how you lose money and fail in life, according to Tom Corley. Now, Tom also suggests you associate with like-minded individuals. That's a habit of all successful people, isn't it? Surrounding yourself with others who think, feel and behave the way you would like your ideal future to be. Our environment, our social circle influences how we feel, how we think, how we behave. So make sure you've got the right people inside your social circle and eliminate from your social circle the wrong people. Tom also in his blog suggested devote time to greatness. Make a habit of devoting blocks of time to your dreams and your goals. Isolating time every day to think about things, to do things that will help you build a foundation for your success and avoid doing things that take time away from those activities. He said to become truly great at anything, you must dedicate time and energy to it. And I'd agree with that. And the last thing on the list Tom Corley suggested about how to have the right habits to drive your success is be patient. In fact, he suggests being patient is a habit. Great things take time to bloom. The best investments take time. Success takes time. Survive until you thrive, said Tom. Do the things every day that'll help you move forward and be patient. Those things will eventually begin paying dividends. Well, thanks for spending the last little while with me, and I hope you got some benefit from this show. If you did, and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there's 3 little buttons down the bottom. Press it and share it, or just tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you'll definitely be doing me a favour and helping me in my quest to make as many people as possible financially literate. Now, there's ways of catching up with me between these shows. Just look for Michael Yardney on social media, or why not join my private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. And I have a way of saying thank you to you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where you can get a bunch of ebooks and reports. My way of saying thank you. And when you've got time, why not listen to some of the old podcasts? There's individual lessons in each of those that I think would be helpful for you. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?